What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome into the Thomas Mott Show on a Tuesday. There are a lot of things going on with not just the Philadelphia Eagles, but also the National Football League as well. We're going to dive into this whole idea that Philadelphia is guaranteed that they're going to trade for somebody to improve the roster at some point over the next couple of weeks leading into the NFL trade deadline. We'll start there. A little bit bizarre. I guess I'll give you some names, but I don't think they're going to go ahead and trade for any of these players. Then we're going to look at DeVonta Smith, potentially a punt returner in Philadelphia. Is that a good idea? It might not be. They need a spark in terms of kick return and punt return, but is Smitty the right call? We'll talk about that. And of course, we'll get into our National League story of the day. Fascinating article from the NFL.com. NFL Fact or Fiction. Which teams are good, which teams are bad, and how do we feel about the overall, scope of the National Football League through 3 weeks of the NFL season. First, before we go ahead and jump into this, I want to mention if you're going to Jaguars Eagles this Sunday, I will be there. I'll talk more about where I'm going to be sitting. If you guys want to come say hi and hang out, maybe a little tailgating at the beginning, I'll talk more about that here after the first story. So obviously stay tuned and hit that thumbs up button for today's show. All right, let's go ahead and start with this idea of trades. Now, trades are always fun, right? I think trades are one of the most fun things you can have happen to your football team in the National Football League, especially during the offseason, because you're watching your team get better before your very eyes. During the season is a very different ballgame. You got to think back to the idea that not a lot of midseason trades are actually big-time trades. Like, there very rarely are multiple trades during an NFL season that have an immediate impact for both NFL teams or for really the NFL team that was making the trade because they want to go ahead and possibly get better. Now, it does happen. There have been midseason trades that have worked out very, very well. People in Philadelphia obviously think back to Jay Ajayi being traded from the Dolphins to the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017 and then being an integral part of really the Eagle rushing attack all the way to a Super Bowl victory. And because Philadelphia looks very similar to the 2017 team as they do right now in 2022, a lot of Eagle fans, I get all these tweets on my Twitter account, @RealThomasMott, a lot of comments down below on the show saying, hey, what about this trade? What about going and getting a running back? What about going and getting a pass rusher? What about making the roster even better? And so, sure, we can entertain this idea, and there's a great article from Bleacher Report talking about players who are on the trade block right now, despite the fact it only being week 3, but I do think we need to understand that very rarely are you making a massive trade or a big enough trade to make an immediate impact. Now, there are some holes. You can make running back, and we said pass rusher are 2 options right now in Philadelphia, but the odds of Philadelphia going and getting any of these players, to me, are very slim. And I think that Eagle fans need to acknowledge that and understand that this roster is stacked. This roster is loaded, and really are not a lot of needs right now that are as urgent as some people are making it seem like. And so while we're going to take a look at some names, I'll throw some other ones out there that could make some sense, especially running backs. I want to preface this show and start this show by saying the odds of there being a massive trade for Philadelphia, another one after all we had this offseason happening during the regular season, seem to be a little slim. Okay, so here's this Bleacher Report article. It came out earlier this month, but it still technically applies in terms of NFL trade block big board. Top potential landing spots entering week 1, and so again, it's a little bit old, but this still goes back and references who was either on the trade block going into the season or who could still be on the trade block based on contract situations or unhappiness with the football team, so on and so forth. So we'll scroll through. Some of these are obviously, not going to happen for Philadelphia or for anybody, so we'll X them out pretty quickly. Some might. So here we go. Let's just scroll through and see what we have. Obviously, the first one is cornerback Sidney Jones. Sidney Jones has gotten a lot better since leaving Philadelphia. If you think back to the second-round draft pick in the 2018 draft after the Eagles, the 2017 draft, I should say. He's not going to actually go to Philadelphia, so that one's not going to happen. They love their cornerbacks. Bradbury is playing at an unbelievable level. Keep going here. Nelson Aguilar with the Patriots, you wouldn't want him back, right? Come on. I mean, again, this is another option, but you wouldn't want him back overall. Kareem Hunt is the first one that actually would make a little bit of sense here, although I'm not sure the Browns are fully sold on trading Kareem Hunt. Now, you would say, Thomas, well, they have Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb is the best running back in the National Football League, or one of the best running backs in the National Football League. Yes, but they do kind of like the 1-2 punch that is happening right now. I know Dearness Johnson is trying to, move up roster spots right now on the overall depth chart. Hunt makes some sense, and I think a lot of Eagle fans clamored for him during the offseason. I don't know if he would be a big enough impact at the running back spot to really, warrant a trade. Now, the beautiful thing about trading for a running back is they're cheap. You could get Kareem Hunt for a 5th-round draft pick. I mean, you could get him for pennies on the dollar. And so you might say, Thomas, I know he might not be like a 1,000-yard back, but he could be a great compliment right now to Miles Sanders, and that's what Eagle fans are kind of wanting because so far Boston Scott and really disappointingly Kenny Gainwell have not been a really good number 2 punch whenever they have spelled Miles Sanders in the backfield. So First option on the list is Hunt. He does make some sense. I'm not sure Cleveland is as keen to trade him away as some people think, but he's an option. All right, let's just settle on that. He's an option. Okay, we keep going here. Cleveland Farrell. I think the Raiders are a mess right now. They're 0-3. They keep losing these close games. I don't know if Farrell is actually worth trading for. I know that there was some rumblings this offseason from people on Twitter saying that Philadelphia should try to, revitalize his career. If you were going to go get a pass rusher, he's later on in this article, so stay tuned for that one. Hint, he was in the thumbnail. Let's just say that. Farrell has been absolutely very disappointing. Now, I have mentioned Denzel Mims on my Twitter account in the past. I think Denzel Mims, the former Baylor wide receiver, needs a fresh start. I talked about how, Rager needs to be moved on from, which Philadelphia did, and maybe you bring in kind of the new Rager in Denzel Mims, a.k.a. a high draft pick who did not live up to his overall expectation. You could, bring him in and kind of mentor him and get him better. I don't think so anymore. Philadelphia has very clearly showed you that they're interested in 3 wide receivers. There are only 3 wide receivers who are really going to touch the football right now in Philadelphia: A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and Quez Watkins. Pascal is a 3B. He does get touches, but he is more of a blocker guy, and he's more of an extra route runner on the football field, but he's not a first option. And behind Pascal, no one else is getting targets or touches or catches at all. It is a 3 wide receiver system right now with the addition of Pascal, who I do like. I'm not bashing Pascal. I think he's been fine, but I don't think there's any room for Denzel Mims. Trading for him makes no sense, and trading for any wide receiver, you talk about signing OBJ and stuff, it's not going to happen because Philadelphia likes what they have right now, and they don't want to mess up that chemistry. Okay, obviously Darnold, no, this is an older article. Darius Slayton, absolutely not. Chuck Clark, no, you don't need a safety right now. Philadelphia loves C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Garoppolo, come on, let's keep going. Robert Quinn, we settle here. Robert Quinn is one of the better edge rushers in the National Football League, and if you're an Eagles fan, you would say, Thomas, for sure trade for Robert Quinn. I would give up a lot for Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn would make this defense better. Yes, he would, but you get to the same issue you currently have at the wide receiver spot when you want to bring in another wide receiver. There's not enough room. This Eagle defensive line is very much stacked, and we saw that in the 9-sack win against Carson Wentz and company. They have plenty of outside pass rushers. You do not want to take snaps away from BG, or take snaps away from Josh Sweat, or take snaps away from Hassan Reddick. And I know Reddick's an outside linebacker, and he can be moved around and stuff, but those are your 3 main outside pass rushers, and they can only play so much, right? Very rarely will all 3 be on the football field at one time. And so while Robert Quinn is a great pass rusher and would definitely add some dynamic sacking abilities to the Eagles' defensive line, you're taking snaps away from someone else, maybe probably Josh Sweat. And Josh Sweat needs to be on the football field because his development is crucial, and he's shown, based on the new contract he got last year, that he is blossoming into a young star pass rusher. And so I like Robert Quinn. Philadelphia trades for Robert Quinn tomorrow, I'm fine with it. I'm going to be like, cool, wow, we just got even better. But is it a necessity? Is it worth what you'd have to go ahead and not only trade and give up for him, but then re-sign him to a long-term deal? I mean, right now his base salary is $12.8 million. I just don't see Quinn being a viable option. I don't see Philadelphia making that move, and so we move on to some other names. Now, there are 2 others that I at least have thought of here over the evening when I was looking up stuff for this show. I think Josh Jacobs is a name that would make sense. There was that report earlier on in the offseason. Philadelphia made a call to the Raiders about it. They said no. They've reiterated that the Raiders are not going to go ahead and trade Josh Jacobs. He is in a contract year, and he's not doing much this year. I mean, you look at the numbers here from ESPN. Right now, he's just not really been that impressive. Sure, he had 69 yards in that loss to the Cardinals, 57 in that opener against the Chargers. I just don't see him as being a viable option right now for the Raiders long term. And so they've said that he's not going to be traded, but I could see him being traded. And honestly, I would welcome Josh Jacobs with open arms. The problem Philadelphia would have is you'd have 2 young running backs who are expiring contracts, and 2 of which who have underachieved at points during their careers. I mean, Jacobs has had injury issues. Obviously, Miles Sanders has had injury issues. If you wanted a number 2 back, I think he's probably your best option out there. Now, this does need to, we need to say that Kenny Gainwell's got to be better. I thought Kenny Gainwell year 2 was going to be electrifying. I thought he was going to be utilized a lot out of the backfield. I thought he was going to get a lot more touches than he has over the past couple of weeks, and that still might change. But right now, it's not really a running back by committee system. Yes, they use all 3, but Sanders is your feature back, and Sanders has had moments, but he's not been, the 100-yard rusher, the 1,000-yard rusher so far that I hope that he would go ahead and be. And so I'm open to Jacobs. I don't hate the idea. I think he can make some sense. And as mentioned with Kareem Hunt, it's pennies on the dollar. You're literally going to go ahead and get him for a 6th-round draft pick, like, it's not going to take much. And let me just be clear, with the trade deadline coming up in a couple of weeks, the Raiders could keep losing and get to the point where they are officially eliminated or close to being eliminated, and they might try to sell people regardless. That way they can have more draft picks and, go ahead and improve their team in the offseason. So your best option out of the ones we talked about is probably Josh Jacobs. I'll throw Melvin Gordon in here. There were Melvin Gordon rumblings again this offseason. He's just not done much. I think he'd be a good number 2 punch to Miles Sanders. I think his running style would be very, very, powerful. People talk about the power that the Eagles need, that kind of Jordan Howard type back, as Ajayi and Blunt were a great combination. I don't know if Gordon's good enough, and I think that Denver wants to keep him to go ahead and spell Javonte Williams, but Gordon would be another option that we at least could mention here for everyone who's commented on this show saying trade for a running back. He's probably one of the only other running backs that would be tradable, that would be open to being traded by their current football team in Denver. I would still take Josh Jacobs over Melvin Gordon. So again, the point here is not to run through names and be like, hey, this player or hey, that player. The point here is to show you that there aren't a lot, and I don't know if there's a lot of actual difference makers out there to improve the Eagles team. And I think that we need to just sit back and relax and understand that Philadelphia as a whole is really good. And I know we're 3 weeks in. I know that there's plenty of, ebbs and flows in the NFL season, and things can change, and there can be injuries, and the trade deadline is still a couple of weeks away, and so things can still happen. But out of the people who reportedly were either available before the season or could still be available right now, the only name to me that I would actually consider trading for would be Josh Jacobs, and that to me would be a little bit of a stretch, just because I think Philadelphia, they're fine rushing the football as is. They're not having issues with it, but if you wanted to upgrade over Gainwell or Scott, maybe he could go ahead and be an option. Okay, we'll get to DeVonta Smith returning punts possibly in just 1 second. First, I do want to mention I will be at Jaguars-Eagles on Sunday. My roommate is a massive Jaguars fan. I'm obviously an Eagles fan, and so we got tickets to go ahead and fly up to Philadelphia and go to the game. I'm in section, I think I'm in M12 or M13. I can't remember. It's on the, I'll post a picture. It's on the, it's in the end zone, but the second level up is where we're going to go ahead and be sitting. Never sat in the end zone of a football game, so it'll be interesting to see how that is. But we'll be there. I mean, we fly to Philadelphia on Saturday morning, going to hang out in the city, and then obviously head to the game early on Sunday morning. And so if you guys want to meet up, you guys want to come hang out, send me a DM on Twitter, @RealThomasMott. If you're going to the game, let me know. I'd be very curious to see who's actually going to go ahead and be at the game. We're just hoping that the hurricane doesn't affect our flights on Saturday, and so obviously that'll have a little bit of an implication in terms of getting out. Hopefully everyone in Florida is staying safe, by the way, if you're watching this from there. But yeah, going to Eagles-Jaguars. You guys want to hang out? Be fun to go ahead and meet a lot of the people that watch the show. Send me a DM, and we can link up. It would be a lot of fun. It'll be an interesting game for Philadelphia. Let's just say that. We'll talk more about that in the future coming days as we get ready for that game. Okay, let's move over here to this DeVonta Smith getting more punts, and this comes from a Bleeding Green Nation article you see on your screen right now, but really comes from Nick Sirianni at the podium the other day. So here's your quote. We wanted a little spark. It wasn't a slight by any means on Britain. We just want to get the ball in DeVonta's hands when they were backed up. He did a nice job of getting some yardage off of that. And then he goes on to say, we'll see how it goes with that, what that turns into. As of right now, it's a spot thing, but who knows? We'll see how that goes. Continue to see how the season goes. And so he's talking about how Smith did, return a punt, in that win against the Washington football team. I don't have any problems with putting him in, spot here, spot there. Philadelphia did that with Deshaun Jackson later on in his career. I think, Miracle in the Meadowlands number 2. But Covey was drafted or was signed for a reason. This is his lone job. He's not going to get reps at wide receiver. He's not going to make a lot of catches. He's not going to play a lot in the slot as he did at Utah. Your job is to return kicks. And they need to continue to work him and figure out if he's going to be a viable kick returner in the National Football League. Now, it's tough, and he's young, and things change. But the idea that you need DeVonta Smith back there every single punt return, to me, is too much. You don't want to have a scenario where DeVonta Smith is, put in harm's way, which often happens on punt return, or is overworked. I mean, you got to have a fair, balanced set of plays for him overall. The way he's not overworked, his body's not overstrained, and he's not too tired. I know he's an NFL player, Thomas. He's going to be just fine. Yes, I know, but there needs to be a balance there. And so keep playing Covey. Let Covey be your main primary punt returner. But if you need a spark, right? Maybe you have you're down 10 in the fourth quarter, or you need to go ahead and get the ball up to the 40-yard line. That way you can have a possible field goal attempt. Go ahead, sure. Put in DeVonta Smith in little spots. I think Sirianni's handling this just fine. And I know a lot of people are going to be dramatic about this today and say, oh, yes, oh, no. It's really not a big deal. Covey's going to be just fine. I still trust in Covey, and I think he at least returning kicks and at least catching the football, which is the first, stage of being a punt returner, he's been just fine. And I've had no issues with that at all. Okay, final story, National League story of the day. We always like to go ahead and conclude the Thomas Mott Show with an NFL story because if you are an Eagle fan, you still might watch this if you're not an Eagle fan and say, hey, what's going on with the NFL news? I want to hear from the NFL. And so I think this article from Adam Shine from the NFL.com is a good indicator and a good thing to break down on the show today because it encompasses a lot of the questions and a lot of the big-time storylines that are happening in the National League Football or the National Football League right now. You see this, NFL fact or fiction. Eagles NFC best team, Dolphins AFC best team, serious concern for Bucks and Chiefs. Let's just try to decide if these are indeed fact or fiction. First of which, the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. We're going to ignore what Shine says on all this stuff. Let's just give you my take. Yes, they are the best team in the NFC. And sure, there are some other good teams, but every other team, as we have talked about in the NFC, has some sort of flaw. You can go down the list. The Packers are one-dimensional, and Aaron Rodgers hates his receivers. The Bucks have a serious set of injuries, but even when they're healthy at wide receiver, they still have not a very good offensive line, and Tom Brady has 45. That's not to knock him, because we think Tom Brady's a great quarterback, but still, they have plenty of issues there. Arizona has a quarterback and coaching issues. I'm trying to think of other teams that are actually good. The 49ers have Jimmy Garoppolo and quarterback issues. The Rams have serious offensive line issues and some identity problems right now in terms of throwing the football. Every single team in the NFC has a serious flaw except for Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Eagles are 3-0. If they win on Sunday and they win convincingly against the Jaguars, I think everybody will agree Philadelphia is the best team in the NFC because the Jags are a sneaky good football team, and if Philadelphia beats them by double digits, that's going to further solidify the idea that the Eagles are legit. Okay, the Dolphins, the best team in the AFC. I would say no. I think Buffalo would still be better on a neutral site, especially up in Buffalo in cold weather. I think playing in Miami in September is one of the harder things to do due to the fact that it's humid and hot. But I do think the Dolphins are legit. I think the Dolphins are probably going to win their division, or maybe not win the division because of Buffalo, but come close to winning their division. They will be a formidable wildcard team. And if you are one of those teams that does win your division and you have the 5-seeded Dolphins coming to your house, you're going to be seriously scared coming up, early January because the Dolphins have a great defense. They have a severely underrated secondary that nobody talks about because the focus is on Tua and Tyreek Hill. They can run the football. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is really good. Waddle's a great number 2. They're very much built in the Eagles' mold. You have this underrated, not proven quarterback who's had a lot of controversy. You have 2 star wide receivers. You have a really good defense. You have a young head coach who was criticized a lot early on. The Dolphins are the AFC version of the Eagles. That's why I'm rooting for them. I think they are legit, but they're not the best team. I still take Buffalo and Josh Allen. Bucks' only real concern is getting healthy. No, that is not true. I know that Evans and Godwin and Julio Jones being out is an issue, but overall, this offense, they can't run the football. They can't protect Tom Brady. The only good thing about the Bucs right now is their defense. Now, the defense is very good. The defense can definitely, win them some playoff games here, and Tom Brady can do that as well. But the Bucs' only concern is not the fact that they're injured. The Bucs' concern is that the offensive line is permanently injured because guys are on IR and not coming back this year. The Chiefs have no real concerns. The Chiefs have some concerns. I think the lack of Tyreek Hill is, a difference maker. I think Tyreek Hill had so many plays over the course of his Chief career that we look back and say, or we underappreciated, but now would look back and say no one else could have made that touchdown. It might have been a punt instead. I think they're still obviously, one of the best teams in the AFC, but the idea that they have zero issues right now and nothing to really worry about, it's not necessarily true. You couldn't put up points against, yes, a good Colt defense, but not a great Colt defense. They're going to be fine, and trust me, the Chiefs are going to be just fine, but the idea that they're just going to roll to 13 or 14 wins and be the number 1 seed in the AFC, as they have done the past couple of years, is not going to happen. Jags can win the AFC South? Yes. We're going to get into a full Jaguar-Eagle, look ahead and preview coming up next couple of days here. This is a legit football team, and it has nothing to do with the players, even though they're all great. Doug Peterson has completely changed everything, and you see it right there. I just read that from the Adam Shine article here. He's a difference maker. He knows how to win. Come on. Everyone in Philadelphia knows what Doug Peterson is capable of doing. He looks really, really good, and I think right now he is going to be great or do great things for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll just do one more here. Lamar Jackson is the runaway favorite for MVP. No, you still have Josh Allen. You still have Jalen Hurts. I am not worried about that at all. So in the end, there are fun storylines that are emerging right now in the National Football League, and Philadelphia might be the most exciting one. If you're an Eagle fan, you would obviously agree with that. But there are plenty of other things happening right now that is going to impact Philadelphia as we continue to go on, and the big focus, of course, is the Jaguars. Let me know what you guys think. Again, always give the video a thumbs up. That helps the channel grow, helps the show grow. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you guys, if you're in Florida, stay safe, but wherever you are, have a great rest of your day.